What's up, JEFusion fans? This is Philip, and welcome back to another video. So, it's been a very busy couple of weeks, so I haven't been able to post a lot recently. So, with that out of the way, this is actually the third and so far, I guess the final part of my videos on the history and evolution of Super Sentai suits. And in today's video, we're talking about the new generation of Super Sentai suits and how they came about. So, stick around and let's talk about these new costumes. So, reviewing the first two videos in this series, so we started out with cloth made costumes, and then we moved on to the most iconic era of Super Sentai suits, which was the spandex era. But in today's video, in this generation of Super Sentai suits, we've seen basically a lot of changes that are very drastic. While we still have quite a maintained concept of like a group of heroes wearing multicolored costumes. Well, basically uniform, they are distinctive because of their colors, and some suit designs in general. But looking at the materials and the types of suits that they use today, it's definitely different from what we've had before. So, from the previous video, right, I mentioned that the spandex had been the very, uh, yeah, you could say like the very definition of what Super Sentai is, right? So, like I mentioned, it was the most iconic period in Super Sentai history because it's the longest. It was used the longest, right? More than 30 years, almost 40 if you think about it. But nowadays, like the materials used for the bodysuits in Super Sentai series, I think has drastically changed. To be completely honest, the last time I've seen a Sentai series that has truly used spandex costumes would be Dawn Brothers. From King Oger onwards, I think the type of material they use for the bodysuits are now completely different. Take a look at Boom Boomger, for example. I mean, look at the bodysuits. Well, yes, the team or the Boom Boomgers are supposed to be reminiscent of an actual racing team, right? And looking at the material, especially if you look at Boom Violet's bodysuit, the material is definitely a far cry from spandex. It's not the glossy type of suit that you would imagine Super Sentai would have typically, but they do be using a new type of material that seems to be like a sort of padded bodysuit. Well, it still maintains like the body, like the more natural body fit. I actually think it's much more form fitting, but it's definitely looking a lot thicker than spandex in my opinion. And like the Boom Boomers, again, because of the material used for their bodysuits, they actually really look closer to like an authentic racer outfit that you might see, right? And that is not just the case. So, in recent entries, especially somewhere in the later Heisei era entries of Super Sentai, we have started seeing armors being incorporated into the suits. So, armors were typically reserved as some sort of power ups. Speaking of armors, the very first time armors were used in Super Sentai was way back in Kagak Sentai Dynaman, the very first Super Sentai that featured spandex suits also featured the very first armor, and that would be the Dynatector worn by Dyna Black. Interestingly, you know, we would associate the armors with, I don't know, like Red Rangers typically, but the very first Sentai hero to wear an armor on top of his suit was actually a Black Ranger. However, armors really wouldn't be an occurring theme for the most part. So the first time an armor was used, again, it was more of like an individual piece of armor, right? Again, only Dyna Black was using the Dynatector and nobody else. Now, the very first team that actually used armor as a power up would be Chikyu Sentai 5 Man with a 5 Tector. So it did involve like shoulders, arms, and legs. I'm not so sure about the chest area. I mean, over here they do have some sort of plating anyway. But yes, 5 Man was the very first Super Sentai to actually use armors for the whole team, albeit it was a power up. And, this would be quite a recurring trend in, some teams later on, but definitely as a team, again, 5 Man was the first to do it. And speaking of armors, we would also associate them with most of the 6th Rangers. Let's take, for example, the most popular armored 6th Rangers in this case. These would be Dragon Ranger and Kiba Ranger from Kyoryu Sentai Geo Ranger and Gosei Sentai Dai Ranger, respectively. So, of course, we would see these armored suits become iconic thanks to the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers when Tommy Oliver wore both these suits in the Power Rangers franchise. Again, they had armor. They were exclusive to the 6th Ranger. Well, in the case of Dragon Ranger, though, he was able to pass on the armor to the Red Ranger eventually, and the Black Ranger even, wore the armor once. But again, that would still be quite a rare case. However, moving forward to 2017 with Q Ranger. So this is the first time that an actual team wore armors regularly as part of their suits. So some suits in Q Ranger actually were also quite revolutionary, in my opinion. Let's take, for example, Okami Blue, right? So his bodysuit was actually almost completely made out of fur. Well, considering that he's a wolf, he's a dog, and again, wolves, dogs have fur around them, and he also has, again, like the armor incorporated into his bodysuit. Well, the humanoids will still have their spandex base suits with armors. I would say Ho-Oh Soldier seems to be like the odd one out because his suit doesn't really seem to be using spandex at all. Like, New Commander, for example, like a lot of people don't consider him as the 6th Ranger, but he actually uses a lot more spandex than, Ho-Oh Soldier. So, again, it's really a unique twist, in my opinion, and it was revolutionary for its time, I think. So, moving forward, a lot of like Sentai heroes would be using partially armored suits. Well, let's take a look at Kira Major, for example. So, Kira Major, again, they were still using your typical spandex bodysuits. So, they were still, unique in fact that they had armored shoulders. So as the first Dewa Super Sentai, so even though they had again like unique elements to them, like they do have sparkly, glittery parts. Surprisingly, their suits again in general are definitely your typical spandex types. Now, I would say, for example, like Zenkaiger. So Zenkaiger was also unique because, well, I wouldn't say they weren't that revolutionary if you think about it, because so for example, Zen Kaiser does have a spandex bodysuit base. While he is regularly armored, again, that's something that was also done before, going back to Q Ranger. I would say the same thing with Two Kaiser and Stay Caesar. So they still had spandex suits with some slight armor on them. Now, the rest of the Kikainoid Zenkaigers, however, they were basically based on mech suits. They were based on the robots. And therefore, you would just have like miniaturized, quote unquote. You would just use, you know, modified suits, for example, or something like that. Take, for example, Zenkai Jiran, who was obviously based off of the Daijujin. So you just modify a Daijujin suit, and there you go. Zenkai Jiran. And that goes for the rest of the other Zenkaigers as well. Specifically the Kikainoid ones. But again, they did offer a unique twist. Now, Dawn Brothers, so going back to Dawn Brothers for a little bit, so they did offer some unique designs. So looking at Don Momotaro and Oni sister, and maybe Don uh, Torabolto, Don Doragoku, Don Torabolto. So again, they were spandex wearing, but uh, you know, they also had body armor or some armor, especially Don Doragoku, right? However, what's also unique is um, Saru brother with his rather furry um, outfit. So he does have fur, especially on the top. So that was actually done before again with another Blue Ranger actually, which was Okami Blue. And well, we don't see much of like costumes for Kiji brother and Inu brother. Well, usually reserved for stage appearances. Again, they still had this body armor, but they were also wearing spandex, right? And in some scenes where you would see Kiji brother, for example, like shot really up close, so they do use a costumed actor wearing a spandex bodysuit and some armor. So again, like especially this kind of framing up close, so we can see during his up close action scenes that yes, there is an actual suit used in the show for Kiji brother at least. So Ina brother is usually just a prop because you know Tsubasa actually shrinks down when he transforms into um, Inu brother. So yeah. However, looking at shows after Dawn Brothers, again, so we've had at least three, right? So we have King Oger, Boom Boomger, and now we have Gojuger. So I have mentioned Boom Boomger already, and well, they had again like a brand new type of bodysuit. They also had some sort of armor incorporated into them if you actually look closely. So For example, Boom Red, Blue, and Pink. So they actually have like shin guards, if you look closely. For Boom Black and Orange, they have some pieces of armor, particularly on the left shoulder. It's only Boom Violet who doesn't have anything attached to him at all, which for me makes his bodysuit like easier to distinguish actually. It really looks like an actual racing suit in my opinion. Yeah, that's what I can say about him. Now, King Oger and Gojuger I think have kind of this similar concept. Again, they're not wearing spandex, at least how I see it. But it is a mix of like materials you can see. I think it's much clearer with the Gojugers because they have a black base, and then you have like shiny, kind of like vinyl or fake leather parts on them. And again, it's really visible if you look at it. However, for the King Ogres, because they're very monotone for the most part, uh, you will definitely notice if you look closely, of course, you will definitely notice that they also have this material of like a smoother or like glossier kind of like fake leather material onto this new padded type bodysuit. Yeah. And actually, I before I forget, I wanna make a special mention to Go Busters. So Go Busters was the very first Sentai to basically use almost like a leather material. So given that they were just off the heels of an anniversary show, Go Kaiger, so maybe Bandai wanted to do something new with the suits, and therefore they used a new type of material, which seems to be synthetic leather for the Go Busters. Well, I would say honestly they're not the best looking, but I understand that they had a more serious tone in general. However, the fact that they used another type of material rather than the more iconic spandex, which would be used a lot, by the way, even after Go Busters, the fact that they tried to use something new and they did something new with the bodysuits was something that I could respect at least. Again, they're not the best looking in my opinion, but they definitely were original for the time. So yeah, that was my history and evolution of Super Sentai suits. So what do you guys think? Would you rather stick to spandex, or would you like to see Toei continue using brand new materials and like brand new designs for their Super Sentai suits? Let me know down in the comment section. So as always, thanks for watching, and as always, please do leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, and don't forget that notification bell so you get the latest from JEFusion. This has been Philip, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.